Good evening, everybody. It's my pleasure to welcome you and our online viewing audience to TimesTalks D.C., our live conversation series pairing New York Times journalists with the brightest and most innovative minds in politics, policy, film, art, business, and technology. I'd like to give a special welcome to our New York Times subscribers and thank you for the role that you play in making our journalism happen. Tonight, we're exploring the topical themes of Russian espionage, double dealing, and female empowerment, the subjects of the upcoming spy thriller, Red Sparrow. We're thrilled to be joined by the star and the director of this new film, as well as a real-life former chief of disguise from the CIA, for a wide-ranging discussion on a real-life spycraft and its Hollywood counterpart. Here to interview them is someone who knows all things Russian and all things foreign intrigue, a former Moscow correspondent. He now covers national security for our Washington bureau, where he has reported on everything from the Russian cyber attack during the 2016 election to security breaches and spilled secrets at the NSA. So please join me now in giving a warm welcome to our moderator and my colleague, Scott Shane, and our special guests, Jennifer Lawrence, Francis Lawrence, and Jonna Mendez.
Hello.
Thanks, everybody. I should say before we get to this Jennifer, that Jennifer STEINHAUER, who just gave this introduction, was one of the sharpest-eyed and wittiest of reporters covering Congress until recently, when she kind of essentially created these New York Times events as a part of our secret plan to survive rough times in the newspaper industry. But she was sort of the Katniss Everdeen of congressional reporters, and people were terrified of where she might point her bow and arrow. So thanks for coming out and supporting this. We're going to be having discussion among ourselves for about an hour, and then we will open it to questions, and Jennifer's co-star Joel Edgerton will join us for the Q&A at the end. I have questions for Jonna and for Francis, but I'll start with Jennifer. I realized as I prepared for this how many great performances of yours I had seen, just by being like in movies, Winter's Bone, Hunger Games, American Hustle, Silver Linings Playbook. And, but until I did my research, I had not seen your Burger King commercial.
Oh my God.
Which was, which was spectacular. And it's out there on YouTube. How old were you?
I was 15.
You were 15, okay. But you had real stage presence as a hamburger, so that was...
I wasn't the hamburger.
No, okay.
My boyfriend was a hamburger.
Okay. I know that you guys have not seen the movie. We'll be showing a couple of brief clips later from Red Sparrow.
Never done a commercial.
But let me begin by asking you about your character, the Russian
intelligence. In the Burger King commercial?
No. We're going to move on to Red Sparrow now.
Okay,
yeah.
moving on.
If you want to talk about the Burger King.
I have one story, but it's fine. We can move on. We can get into the movie.
You are the Russian intelligence officer, Dominika Yegorova. Correct me if I'm wrong, but though you've inhabited some very different characters, often you play very resourceful women who are sort of survivors, sometimes surviving emotional challenges, sometimes just staying alive. And this character seems very much in that mold. But tell me about this character and what was, kind of how you prepared for this role, and what you make of her.
Well, and I feel like, where there's a strong woman, there's an interesting story there. So, story and character are always kind of paramount when making a decision. And Francis had been talking to me about this story, and I thought it was fascinating. And then by the time I read the script, I just thought, I just loved it. I thought it was unique, and sad but exciting. I had never seen a psychological thriller quite like this, and the fact that it's based off the book that Jason Matthews, who was a CIA officer, had written. There was so much insight into it, and it was interesting. And what were you asking?
Well, Dominique.
I've been doing
Dominique
this all day. I can't like I'm connecting.
She's
all
been
the
giving press interviews all day.
I've had all day, and then I just like thought I was in it somewhere else.
Yeah, we're
What?
They're working you pretty hard, aren't they?
No. Today is honestly the first day.
Wow. It's a hard job.
And I was seriously like on the red carpet, like out here, and I was like, people are gonna think I'm like on Quaaludes or something. Yeah. Okay.
So, but one other question about your character.
Yeah,
She's
please.
sort of it's sort of an odd, an unexpected combination because she's kind of a homebody who is very devoted to her ailing mother on the one hand, and on the other hand, she's a rather strong personality, capable of doing serious physical harm to people who tick her off. And that's even before she becomes a spy.
Yeah.
So was it difficult to balance those two elements in her character?
No, I mean, we had conversations about that before. You know, the entire reason that she's put into this situation is because she's caring for her mother, and that's kind of her whole life is her mother. So she's ultimately forced to choose between her allegiance to her country or her mother, and that's where the whole story kind of begins. But her anger was kind of an important thing to showcase in the movie, because that's something that, you know, my uncle, who kind of manipulates me into this program, has obviously known me since I was a child. So there are certain parts of my personality that have always ticked him off to, she would be perfect in the SVR. So showing this snapping nature that she has, this boiling anger, that she's capable of violence, was important. But then also the phone call after the violence was important to show that she also is human, you know, and has sympathy. Yeah,
your not so nice uncle says you have a gift. You know how to survive, and that's well demonstrated. You mentioned that this movie is based on a novel by Jason Matthews, who spent 30 years in the CIA. And this is the first in a trilogy of novels. And in fact, it just so happens that the third in that series is coming out momentarily, or it may even be out today.
It's out.
It's out, okay. And that one is called The Kremlin's Candidate. Now, I have no idea where he got the idea that the Kremlin could have a candidate in the United States.
I always thought I would be president of Russia.
He has a very fertile imagination, apparently. Jonna, since we're talking about Jason, who wrote the book on which this movie is based, it was sort of amazing that after you know, we invited you to be on the panel, we found out that you not only knew Jason Matthews, but you had been involved in training him. What can you tell us about that? Because we're going to be sort of gyrating here, I think, between fiction and fact in terms of spying and spies and intelligence work, and you're the fact person, so tell us about training Jason Matthews.
Facts can get me in trouble sometimes at the CIA, now that I'm no longer there.
That's right. She said earlier that she had to watch herself because if she accidentally says something classified, I don't know what happens, but something very bad.
Scott thought maybe there was someone out there in the audience with a dart gun, tranquilizer.
Yeah. If she slumps over suddenly, you'll know that she said something a little too sensitive.
Everyone just come down.
Working with Jason was some years ago. I never imagined that he was going to write a book. I never imagined he was going to be such a good author. The book is excellent. So is the movie. But Jason had a problem. He's very coy about where he served, and so I have to be coy too. Forgive me. But he was working at one of our stations, and they had huge surveillance problems. Now, this was not Moscow. This was somewhere else. And Jason couldn't do the things that he needed to do because there was surveillance all over him. So he had, there were two of us that went where he was serving, and we spent 2 weeks looking at his surveillance, walking around the streets because we had surveillance too. Then we came back to D.C., and he came to D.C. with a map of his city, and we laid it over on top of the map of Washington, D.C., and we found some spots that corresponded. We registered the thing. We had a surveillance team of our own that we used to train people going to Moscow. We called in the surveillance team, and Jason was able to exercise his ideas for how to get away from surveillance on the streets of Washington, D.C. with a very sharp team and get feedback from them. What did that look like? What did you think when I did this? How did that work? And then off he went back where he came from. And we heard nothing because at C.I.A. you don't hear, you don't get feedback. We don't know if it worked. We don't know if it didn't. I'm pretty sure he tried some of these techniques. And when the book came out, and they did a book talk at the Spy Museum, and I saw the notice, and I went right by it, not thinking it was the Jason Matthews that I had known years ago. So I missed his book talk, but I've read his books. They're excellent. And one of the things in his books that it does better than anything else is to describe these surveillance scenes on the street. You are there, your heart's beating, it's
Yeah, we even do a little bit of it in the movie.
Yes, you do, indeed,
Yes.
and my heart was beating when I watched the movie. Loved it.
And oddly, he also has recipes between each of his chapters for some dish that's served in
yeah.
the chapter, which is great. You know, you don't usually read a spy thriller for the recipes,
But he doesn't give any measurements.
No, exactly.
It's like a man, a typical man.
Hey, come on. Before I leave the book, Frances, let me ask you. If you're writing a novel, you can basically say anything, do anything, go anywhere, have as many characters as you want. When you try to turn it into a film, it seems like you usually have to do a lot of boiling down,
Yes.
and certainly with a book like this.
Yes.
So tell me what that process is like, and how do you look at a book like that and kind of find the movie that you can carve out of it?
What's funny, when Fox sent me the book while I was finishing the Mockingjay movies, and I took a look at it, and I instantly loved it, and instantly loved the character of Dominika Igorova. The book is more of a two-hander, a straight-up two-hander with Dominika and Nate, who Joel plays. Mm-hmm. I really wanted to tell the story of Dominika. Mm-hmm. And so that instantly sort of pared the book down some, so that we knew what was going to get lifted. Mm-hmm. The other thing that I wanted to do, and I don't want to spoil anything, but I wanted to change the end. And so we actually sort of adjusted, I would say, the last act of the story to make it a bit more empowering. Mm-hmm. But I think that when I first read it and I fell in love with it, the adaptation process is really about making sure you sort of distill the things that you love about the book. Mm-hmm. And once you finish reading it, there's these sort of tentpole moments that always sort of remain in your memory, and making sure that those things are hit, and the spirit of it is hit, and the emotion of it is hit, and then kind of setting the book aside for a little while and working with the screenwriter.
Has Jason seen the film?
He has, yes.
And did he give a thumbs up?
He gave a big thumbs up, yes.
That's
yeah.
great.
He saw it, his wife saw it, and his daughter saw it.
That's terrific. So we're going to show a short clip of the film so that you guys have at least a sense of what this movie is like. And this one shows mostly the training school where Dominika, Jennifer's character, and the other Sparrows, men as well as women, get prepared for their work, which involves seduction, but also a whole lot of other skills. So if you could show that first clip, please. So, should we do the rest of the panel in a Russian accent?
Yeah.
Jonna, is there anything in that clip, which I know you've seen, that overlaps with training at the CIA?
We spent an inordinate amount of time at the CIA being trained. I worked in a technical office, sort of like the Q. We used to say we were the Q to the CIA. We did bugs, we did small cameras, we did disguises, counterfeit documents, just about anything you needed to accomplish your mission. We took lock-picking courses, and we learned to go through locks. We learned to shoot. We were talking about this in the green room. I was a terrible shot. I needed special remedial attention to be able to, but I never had to carry a gun. We learned about detecting surveillance and avoiding surveillance, and that was a really, really important lesson that you constantly would stay up practicing on. The Swallow School, the Sparrow School, we did not have one of those.
Yes.
We did not get.
No one ordered you to take your clothes off in training?
No, they did not. They did not. They took us captive and held us for 3 days in a cell in the dark, in the cold, with no food. But they never asked us to take off our clothes.
Jennifer, you know, one of the things that occurred to me when I thought about spies and actors is that
We're both acting.
yeah, you're both acting, and you in this film are an operations officer, which means you're already pretending to be, you know, something else, and then you're an actor trying to be, you know, pretending to be an operations officer, pretending to be something else. So there are whole layers. But I wonder if this whole experience gave you any insight into what it would be like to be a spy.
No, I don't think I would be good in that line of work. I'm what we call an anxious puppy. I don't have the threshold for it. But there wasn't really, it is layered, but I don't play any of the layers because Dominika is an actor and she's giving a flawless performance. So it's really just believing every step that you're doing. I mean, I think the only time that we started, or I can only really remember one scene where I don't know how else to describe it, but she had learned, you know, every human being is a puzzle of need, find the missing piece and become that. I remember doing a scene where Matthias, who played my uncle, was coming in, and I completely, in my mind, it's probably you'll watch it and be like, no, you didn't, but in my mind, you know, knew to switch to innocence and remind him of the little girl, make him feel bad for me. But other than that, you're just
see the change.
Yeah, but other than that, she's giving a flawless performance, so there is no faking.
But you're a different, it seems like you're a different person in many different settings because you're interacting with these people who you're trying to convince of different things. And your involvement with Nate Nash is especially interesting because you obviously both have a professional role going on at the same time as there's a sort of emerging personal role, and you know, and I think you both project that, or is there? Yeah.
Or is there?
Yeah, and the audience has to guess.
I mean, yeah, their relationship is an interesting catch-22 because on the one hand, they can't trust each other because you know a thief can't trust a thief. But really, they're never going to be able to have true intimate relationships with anyone without telling them the truth. And the only person who can really know the truth is another spy that knows all of the stakes. So it's a very interesting relationship that I don't know. Like when it gets to the end of the movie, like I genuinely, I don't know
It's still
what was real and what.
Yeah. Well, if this is a huge hit, as I think Jonna and I who've seen it are confident it's going to be, there are 2 more books to turn into movies. So you'll get to work it all out. Jonna, do spies, to turn this around, do spies ever take acting lessons?
Not that I know of. I can think of some who should. Maybe they'll take some pointers from you, Jennifer.
But they are pretending to be, I mean, traditionally a diplomat, right? You're the third agricultural attaché or something attached to some embassy.
That's a very popular cover.
Or the
Are we allowed to talk about this? God. Somebody told me diplomat, and they were like, shh, don't tell anyone, and I never did. And it's been a year, and now I feel like an idiot.
yeah, I think that secret is out.
Wow.
No, we were always doing what Jennifer was depicting on screen. You're sizing up people. You're finding people who have access to the information you want, and then you're looking at them, trying to figure out how to get access to that information. You're looking for their weaknesses. You play to their weaknesses, whatever that means, and that could mean pretending to be someone that you are not. That could mean offering one person money. That could be, there are a variety of ways to go about it. There is deception, there is illusion, there's all kinds of magic-themed things that happen in that process. But you try and get to the person and recruit that person. That's the core of the work. Mm-hmm. And it's one of the things that women have had a bad reputation in the CIA. The men don't think the women have the, the guts to pitch someone.
Interesting.
Work for me.
The guts.
Yeah, guts. Guts is a good word.
Well, I think it's a good moment for the second clip, in which the two main characters, Dominika, the Russian spy, and Nate, the CIA guy, encounter each other at this reception, sort of diplomatic reception, which is a classic place for CIA officers undercover to be kind of, trolling for possible candidates to be recruited. And I believe I'm right in saying that earlier in the film, Nate says, she's recruitable, she's recruitable. And
yeah,
so
it's pretty much just before this scene.
Yeah, okay. So now you see them encounter each other, and these are two people who are basically trained to recruit. They're both trying to recruit the other. Each is trying to recruit the other, so it's a cool scene. Can you cue that one up? You can applaud.
Not if you don't want to.
No, I actually think that's just a terrific, terrific scene. But can you talk about it a little bit?
Sure. Which part?
What were you trying to project there? I mean, it seems to me you're.
So, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think that she is trying to, and it's hard having the director right next to me, but in my opinion, I feel like she's trying to
Don't spoil.
offer herself up. She's trying to make it appear to Nate that she is recruitable, because she wants. Right? That's okay to say.
He's going to shoot you with the
This is
tranquilizer.
honestly like your math teacher is it's like writing on the board. Anyway, so she's trying to demonstrate to him and kind of open herself up to convince him that he's recruitable, so that he will think that he can recruit her. Because the closer they get, the closer she's going to get to what she wants. It's a very complicated world. It's a lot like Hollywood.
And what do you make of that scene, or what were you trying to do in that scene?
Well, I think in this story, there's a series of tentpole scenes between Jen's character and Joel's character, and this is the second big one. She's begun to follow him, and they have their first meeting, which comes a little to Dominica's surprise outside of a pool. And then this is the first time where she purposely seeks him out. But it's also the first time where you start to see, and the scene's actually shortened a little bit, I saw, by the way, so it's a little longer, there's a little more meat to it. But it's the first scene where you start to see the kind of chemistry start to percolate a little bit and start to see them warming, and he actually charms her. It's one of the few times in the movie that Dominica smiles, and that was a big thing for Justin Haith and I, who wrote the screenplay, and I, to try and have him do, for him to charm her some. And so we're sort of playing on the multiple layers.
I think that's what's so fun about it, is that there is a personal chemistry, but there's also, which is from any movie, any rom-com you've ever seen, but there's also this layer of professionals who are trained to, to recruit the other side.
Can I go back to one thing about this thing too?
Yeah.
So one other thing, that's something that you brought up earlier, which is that scene, the Dominica's propensity for anger and violence.
Yes.
It's a key element to this movie and a key element to the character, because knowing that when you get into a scene like this, you're constantly questioning her motives, because she becomes a very unlikely hero, and that for me is kind of a huge part of the fun of the movie.
Yes. I also think that this is a different kind of female character than you would have seen in a thriller, even 20 years ago, maybe even 10 years ago, because you are clearly equals, not only sort of intellectually and in terms of training, but by this point in the movie, you also realize that he better not mess with you in a physical sense, too. And I just think that's just sort of like a kind of historical, sociological thing about, the evolution of society and evolution of movies. But in connection with that, this movie's coming out in the middle of this so-called Me Too moment. And I know you've spoken out very movingly about an ugly experience that you had earlier in your career. But this film involves a young woman who's sexually exploited by the state, as we saw. And also, I guess it's not, spoiler alert, by several guys who try things. And some of them, I should note, end up very, very sorry that they tried anything. But I wonder if any of that occurred to you in thinking about the film. I assume it was filmed before this kind of discussion we're having now in public about sexual harassment and sexual assault. But I wonder, kind of if you made a connection in your head there.
No, not at all. It was filmed before the movement, but I would have done it regardless. This is getting. Bearing yourself for your art or for a movie is my choice. It bears no resemblance whatsoever to being harassed or to anything that's not consensual. So,
so your character
it's great that
is sort of taken aback when.
Well, of course, yes, but
she's in training, right?
Yes, the movie is about. The training that she has to go through is demeaning and dehumanizing. It's terrible. But I don't think in movies we should start, it's kind of like violence. At the end of the day, we are the movie industry. We are here to tell stories and entertain people. The entertainment industry is starting to kind of collide with politics. It's getting very political, but at the point where we start censoring ourselves and not telling a story the way that it was meant to be told because of headlines, I think that would be a huge mistake.
So, Jonna, tell us about in real life, in Soviet and Russian espionage. Is a Sparrow a real thing? Are women taught to be seductresses? And likewise, does the CIA ever use sex as a recruitment tool or teach people to use sex, men or women?
The Russians did have a school, and they did train some of their young women to do this. There was a case that was in the public press mid-'80s. It was a United States Marine who was at the embassy in Moscow and was undone by one of these Sparrows. Her name was Violetta Sena. He was the first U.S. Marine to ever go to prison, ever.
He was one of those guards who stands outside at the booth outside the embassy.
At Post 1, and he says that he let Russians into the embassy. It was a seduction scenario, not unlike something that you would have done in your movie. So it's always out there. We've got cases that go back and back and back in different countries. The Chinese, the Taiwan, the Czechs, the Israelis have used women in that way, and it's become publicly known. But the CIA, as far as a policy, as far as asking women to go out and do that kind of work, to my knowledge, they never have. Now, that doesn't mean that there haven't been some entrepreneurs here and there. Things happen.
Men and women, right?
Men and women, and in my employment, my 27 years at CIA, I know of a woman who lost her job. She was a professional officer, lost her job because she was falling in love with her asset, as we called him, lost her job. I know of a couple of men who were in the same situation and didn't lose their jobs. So it's a little dicey. Depends on who you are and what your gender is.
Yeah. Hard to imagine there would have been unequal treatment.
Hard to imagine.
Yeah.
Frances, she mentioned the U.S. Embassy in Moscow where this Marine Guard was. So tell us where this movie was filmed and whether any of it was filmed in Russia or whether there was any consideration given to, trying to talk to, Vladimir Putin into saying, make a little cash in your spare time and we'll film in Moscow.
No, we actually never thought even about shooting in Moscow.
And why is that?
I think primarily for the financial hit that it would be to shoot there. I think that we ended up choosing Budapest for a few reasons. One is it's quite inexpensive to shoot there, which is a great thing. So you get more bang for your buck. But also, in terms of locations, we could use it for the city itself, but we could also cheat a lot of the architecture for Moscow. And then we could do very minimal visual effects work. So there's a part of the opening sequence where Jen's character is going to the Bolshoi Ballet.
Yes.
And she's crossing a square, and so we created the square where the Bolshoi is and extended the building and did all that kind of stuff.
Wow.
But we primarily shot in Budapest. And
So there's not even any file footage of Moscow scenes?
No.
Or buildings?
No, yeah. So primarily Budapest. We shot in Bratislava as well, also to cheat for Moscow, and Vienna and London. And we shot all on real locations. We didn't do anything on a soundstage, shot everything in real places.
And do the Russians, if you're willing to pay, are the Russians cool with a film like this being filmed there?
I think people do shoot there occasionally. I don't think that there's a lot of American productions that shoot there. I've heard of some people going there. I've also heard that it's very difficult to shoot there. I think the film
Difficult
system,
because?
Well, I was just going to say, I think the film system is a bit chaotic. I've never shot there, so I can't really...
Meaning the people you hire locally and so on?
I don't know. I don't think it's the people. It might just be the sort of the bureaucracy or something. But I've just heard that it's difficult to shoot there.
And do you expect this film to be shown in Russia?
Don't know. I hope so. I hope so.
I'm cool with it.
You're cool with it being shown there?
No, not.
Oh, not being shown.
I haven't been told it's not that it's not playing
Really?
there. Yeah, I haven't been told that.
I suspect it'll be a hit if it is shown there.
Yeah.
But
I'm
we'll
scared of everything.
Can you tell us a little more about preparing for this film? There's a great line, spoiler alert, from one of the Russian characters who tells your character, "Your only problem is you have a soul."
That took a lot of training. Yeah.
To develop
that didn't
a soul.
come to me easily. Yeah. That was just interesting wording on your part.
Well, in the Burger King.
Please
thing,
rephrase that. Yeah, you did a lot of training. Yeah, I did. I mean, even just to play an ex-ballerina, everything kind of had to change, you know. So, I did about 3 hours of ballet for 4 months. It's miserable.
You'd never done dance
I didn't
as a
have
kid?
like the end goal. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
if you're a kid and you want to be a ballerina, you're like putting the work in so that you can be. It wasn't my dream.
Yeah.
And by the time we finished the sequence, it's done. So it was
Yeah.
really hard to find that
Yeah.
motivation. But I had Kurt Froman, who's an amazing ballet instructor, and we tried to condense, a lifetime of training into 4 months, and we got arms, fingers, and a little bit of head. So we got there. Look, I'm doing it. What if I just
You really
started
learned.
spinning? But it was most important to help me, just kind of move and hold my body differently, and also get behind a dancer's mental and physical discipline.
I would think that there is some overlap between some of the spy stuff, some of the rest of the film, and Hunger Games type stuff. Was any of the rest of it that you specifically needed to prepare for or learn?
No, I mean, other than the accent, it wasn't like Hunger Games where I really just had one thing to focus on, which was, my weapon. Before we'd shoot, I did some archery and just kind of get back into. This was really just accent and dancing.
How'd you learn the accent? Was there a coach or?
I had Tim Monick was my instructor, and at first it starts like homework, just kind of written, and where you can see the stresses. Well, first. You find every city has different dialects for different income, different neighborhoods. They all have different dialects. So we discussed what her specific dialect would be, and then then we find that, and then he finds those women and interviews them, and I listen to them first, and it's all very boring, but blah blah blah. I talk in a Russian accent.
But the people that he found and interviewed were like emigres from those towns, so they're speaking in English?
They're speaking in English.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But in a Russian accent.
They had been in the U.S. for a while because we wanted to have a very slight accent. So the idea was to find people that were born and lived in Russia for a long time, but had been in the U.S. for a long time. So it was just a hint of accent remaining.
No, I mean it works. It works great, and I mean obviously it's easier to do that than to learn Russian, right?
One would think.
One would think. So, this is sort of the only geopolitical question that sort of New York Times question, I guess. But the movie, or the Charlotte Rampling character who runs the Sparrow School, calls the Sparrows weapons in a global struggle for power. And one of the things that struck me, I was first in Russia in the 70s studying Russian. So I was there in Soviet times and sort of the transition out of Soviet times. But it really did strike me that there's not much in this film that couldn't have been in the 70s or the 80s. In other words, it could have been the Soviet period. And so it really is sort of a Cold War movie. Okay, you were only, I think, 1 year old when the Soviet Union came to an end, but there is this kind of us and them, and certainly with the spy services, that's always going on. We're in this strange moment in history with an investigation of Trump and Trump's campaign, and did it have ties to Russia? So there's this sort of huge obsession with Russia right now. I wonder if either of you had any qualms in sending this somewhat sort of polarized vision of Russia and the United States out into the world at this time.
Well, I mean, I'm gonna back up just for a second because we started making the movie 3 years ago.
Okay.
Right? And so we had conversations as we were developing the script where we would sit with the studio and the producers and we all kind of went, we fell in love with the characters.
Yeah.
But we thought, God, this Cold War thing doesn't feel all that relevant. And it's like, well, maybe we should brainstorm a little and see if there's any way of making it more relevant. And we kind of never did. We sort of set it, we sort of set that aside and just went with the character story.
Yeah.
And thought
the world came to you, right?
because it really is about the people, right? And it's not a political movie. But as we were shooting and when we were actually prepping and getting into the shoot, this all started to come up, and the movie just became more and more relevant as we've progressed.
And also, as soon as we start letting, fear muzzle our creative expression, then we've lost.
I mean, you didn't want to be inhibited by some political
Yeah, of course.
thoughts. Yeah. And do you, when you think about your character as a Russian spy, I mean, do you think about Putin? Do you think about Moscow today? Do you think about, the Russian intervention in the U.S. election, all that kind of stuff, or do you just completely separate the work on?
I separated it because it was a different world, that we were shooting. It wasn't about the U.S. election, so I wasn't, I personally was following everything, on the news, but it didn't fit into our world in the movie.
Jonna, how about you? How do you treat this as entertainment, or do you think of it as having some kind of political implications?
I saw it as an entertainment based in some very real political situations. If you look at Russia today, it's like they're marching backwards into the Cold War. Democracy is, falling away. If you make movie number 2 and movie number 3, you too may arrive at the same place at some point along the way. It's Jason, when he wrote it, I believe, based on his experience during the Cold War, and maybe shortly after that. And so I think he set the tone and he set the mood for the movie, and I think what they portray is pretty much right on target.
And you think for today as well as Soviet times?
Don't know.
Yeah.
Don't know about today. I was reading an interview with a friend that we had sent out there 30 years ago. I was reading it today. It was a man from L.A., and he said he was scared the whole time he was there. When he went to the airport, he thought somebody might be coming behind him to shoot him. I mean, he was scared he was a civilian, he was scared being in Moscow. That's how it was. I don't think it's like that now.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean it can't.
But it's getting more
like
like that.
that.
There was,
Yeah.
not that long ago, some months ago, there was a diplomat, perhaps a CIA officer undercover, who was heading back into the embassy.
Into the embassy. That's a great video.
And got tackled.
Yeah.
That happened.
We actually
June.
used that in our opening. We were sort of influenced by that for part of our opening sequence.
Yeah.
That was June 6, 2016.
Yeah,
When
and
he got
there's-
attacked.
Yeah, there's a scene of Joel's character running to the embassy, and right before he gets there, a Russian policeman jumps out of the car and tries to tackle
Yeah,
him.
yeah. And they also,
based on that.
there was also in the last couple of years, there was a CIA officer who was sort of ambushed, and they pulled off his wig and kind of dragged him away, and they filmed the whole thing for Russian TV. So the game has gotten a lot rougher. There was this incredible, I was living there between 88 and 91, and there was this, basically incredible rapprochement, and the two spy services were sort of trading information, and everyone was getting along real well. And then after some time, Putin came to power, and he is a professional intelligence officer, and thought the KGB had kind of gotten a bad rap in the 90s, and restored a lot of that. So you're really seeing it play out on the streets now. So it's sort of. I think come back around. Let me ask you this: is there anything that you guys, as having been immersed in the fictional spy world of the movie and the novel for months and months, want to ask Jonna about real spying? a former chief of disguise.
Dart gun.
Yeah. The hard part is I'd want to ask her all the stuff she can't tell me. That's
Hey,
the
try
fun,
her.
That's the fun stuff. That's the fun stuff.
What do you mean you can practice looking for surveillance? You said when you go home, practice. What does that entail?
No, not so much when you go home, but I mean, there is an art to knowing whether you're being followed or not. And if you're being followed,
I could use that in my life.
I can teach you. And
Not
what you,
now.
and what you said about Hollywood being like the intelligence community, that was our experience when we first went out to LA. We said, my God, they're good at this. You know, figuring out what everybody else is up to.
So I was told, and I don't remember if I had read this or if actually somebody told me this, but I was actually told that the U.S. did try some sort of a Sparrow system in the 60s, and it didn't work because of the difference in terms of values and morality around sex with the Russians.
I've never heard that.
That they just didn't care as much, and it didn't work, and so it was scrapped.
But you were saying earlier
those
that
reasons would be
Yeah.
reasons that
Yeah.
it wouldn't work, but I never heard that it was attempted.
At what age do you start looking at pupils that would be good for recruiting? At what age does the CIA start watching possible?
You look for people that are going to have access, and sometimes you look at someone early in their career.
Oh, I'm sorry. I said recruiting. I meant recruiting to work for the CIA, for the United States.
Oh, well, they come to us.
Every
and
time?
Not every time. Pretty much,
If so, I have something to say to somebody who never called me back a few years ago. Said he was being recruited.
well, I bet they're sorry now.
Nah, I'm sure they're not.
things worked out for you.
But
though.
so it's not. You guys don't look out for certain candidates and recruit. Every person who works for the CIA comes to the CIA.
Not every person, but most of them. We look for languages. We look for world experience. We look for people who have familiarity with traveling the world, who can think on their feet, who can problem solve. We have
I
lots.
travel a lot.
Lots of criteria. Try again.
I can speak in accents, not in other languages.
That's good.
Actually, Jonna, sometimes you do reach out to people because when I was finishing grad school, I had no skills to speak of, which is why I ended up in journalism. But the one thing that I had was I'd studied Russian, and I'd studied Russian language in what was then Leningrad. And I wrote so I thought, hey, maybe I could find some job using Russian. And I wrote to a bunch of places, including some government departments, saying, hey, you got any jobs for Russian speakers? And I was living in England, and I did not write to the CIA, and I did not write to DOD because I'd had a great time as a student in Russia, and I wanted to be able to go back and be free to meet with who I wanted to, and so on. But apparently one of those other agencies passed it on to the CIA. So I got this strange envelope with just a post office box for the return address, and inside there was a note that said, this federal agency has expressed a tentative interest in your qualifications. When you return to the United States, call this number to arrange an interview.
That was us.
So it was like, this federal agency? You know, and I looked all over to see if it said which federal agency, and it didn't. So that kind of gave it away. But when I got back to D.C., I called the number just for fun and sort of played dumb and said, I got this letter, you know, and they asked me, what's the signature on the letter? The lady answered with the phone number like they often do at CIA. And I said, I got this letter and blah, blah. And she said, what's the signature on the letter? So I told her the signature on the letter, and I guess I got that one right. So she said, what do you want to know? I said, which federal agency? She said, the Central Intelligence Agency. And I said, I don't think I'm interested. And she said, okay, we'll put your file in the inactive section. And I hung up, and then I thought, my file?
Wow.
That's a
So
great.
sometimes they do reach out.
That's a great story.
Since I told that story in the office, 2 people have told me they got similar letters.
Really?
And one went through the very beginning of screening or training or something like that, and then decided to drop out and became a journalist.
Were the others linguists? Did they also?
They all
have-
had language.
Because language is a critical
yeah.
critical skill.
Yeah.
There's never enough.
So and part of the idea. So why would you not put the CIA in that letter?
I would put it.
Okay. Okay.
I have no idea. I've never heard of an approach quite like that.
I guess the only thing that I thought of is if you're sending it overseas, in some countries at least, it could endanger somebody to have a letter from the CIA coming into their office, and you haven't invited it, right?
Sure.
Okay. So we're going to move on to audience questions pretty soon. So you might want to start moving down, thinking up questions, and if you're going to ask questions from the two microphones here. So if you want to start moving towards those microphones and lining up, that'd be great. In a few minutes, we'll switch to you. We're also going to be joined by Jennifer's co-star, Joel Edgerton. If he's here, maybe he can come up on stage and join us.
Hello.
Hey.
Get off.
Get on. Hello.
Nice to meet you.
So before we go to the audience, let me ask you one. How did you like being a CIA officer undercover? And what kind of preparation did you do? Have you done spies before? And
I'm actually, I actually am a CIA.
you
officer.
are a CIA officer.
And I actually went deep cover to be an actor in order to, and it's a long story to come back to who I am. It was, for me, it was a ticking of a kind of a childhood box for me. I was, talking about it today in some of the press we were doing, but the idea of spy movies and reading spy literature and as a kid, and I hate to. Well, no, I'm happy to admit this. I had a spy kit as a kid that had little binoculars in it and little things. The idea of I guess sneaking up on people. I had a similar fantasy about being a ninja. True. The idea of sneaking up on people and spying on people was such a childhood thing. So to then have grown into a man and be able to still be a child at the same time as an actor, and then to tick that box of being in a spy movie was a cool thing to be asked to do. But what I loved about this movie was that it wasn't the, and talking to Jason extensively about just the human aspects of what he was doing. That it wasn't, the hiding of 5 guns in your socks and everywhere, and speaking 88 languages, although language is obviously a big part of it. But the Jason Bourne fantasy of movie Secret Service man placed more into a kind of a human character world that Francis has created in this movie. It felt very interesting.
So you did spend quite a bit of time talking to Jason about his experience at CIA.
Yeah, it was good to have him around and to have him just talk about just general things like anxiety and stress and the vetting process.
And the constant surveillance.
Yeah, no, you know what really fascinated me is in terms of, also the romance of the film, but the courtship aspect of, like in normal life, you meet a person, you like the person, you go date or whatever, and you start a relationship. The idea that you've got to check in with your boss and that a person, particularly if they're a stranger, would have to go in for a... You'd just strangle me instantly if I'm saying anything I'm not supposed to say as well. But, but the idea that someone who you want to be with would then have to go and take a polygraph and be vetted themselves, even though they're not necessarily working for the agency. I mean, that's a tough thing to bring into a dating situation.
Yeah.
I don't. My friends have done 2 or 3 background checks on men that either one of us have dated, including myself. So.
For you, it's familiar. Yeah.
Yeah, polygraph isn't that
You know,
far off.
at C.I.A., if your girlfriend or boyfriend was foreign, and you decided during the relationship that you were going to get married, along with the announcement that you were going to get married on the memo, you had to submit your resignation.
Really?
Then they had the option always of accepting it or not.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
wanted
Joel,
options.
They're not coming to the wedding then, are they?
so Joel, we were talking earlier about accents, and I realized that even though you weren't playing a Russian, you had to stay in accent all the time too. And you do a great American. So.
Oh, thank you. That's because, at the same time that I owned a spy kit, all I was watching on television was Gilligan's Island, and Brady Bunch, and Happy Days.
You were the professor, right? No, I thought I recognized the...
I had a massive crush on Marianne, but I'll go into that another time.
Okay, so we're going to go to audience questions now. And let me say some things that probably are obvious. Don't ask for a selfie. Don't ask for a hug. Don't ask for an autograph. Don't give a speech. Ask a question. Please try to keep it
Don't be an
short.
asshole.
Don't be an asshole. Thank you.
Just ask a question.
I couldn't say that. I'm the moderator. But
If you're a dickhead, we'll rip you off the stage.
And keep it short, just because there are a lot of people who want to ask questions. So, go right ahead, sir.
Well, without admonition, to me, the mark of a great actor is someone who can play very different people and inhabit those roles, those people, and make it their own. And I think that that's what you have done, to Ms. Lawrence, in your career. And I would use as the examples Winter's Bone, and I wanted to make sure I recommended the audience, when you're checking out the hamburger commercial, please go back and take a look at that performance, which has stuck with me for 7 years.
I second that.
So much.
Which was very grim and very intense young woman. Silver Linings Playbook, which is basically a romantic comedy and also a very interesting character. And this new movie, Red Sparrow, which is completely different. And what I wondered was, is this something, did these parts come to you, or have you consciously looked all the time for different roles to play?
The roles come to you, of course, but then, you make the character, it's a collaboration. So I don't know. They're written differently. You embody them differently. I certainly didn't go, well, I've played this, so the next I have to play that. They're really just, because, even Winter's Bone, I was an auditioning actor, so, I auditioned for all sorts of stuff, so things would just land on my lap. But I've worked with amazing directors who have helped me kind of cultivate each character. But thank you. I like this portion. I can stay a little bit longer. Thank you, sir.
Over here.
I'm not this tall.
Feel free.
Okay, so my question is, you've played the role of a powerful female multiple times. What would you say is different this time? Like, is it the activism that you have, outside of acting that has allowed you to portray these roles so well?
No, I'm really just following, interesting stories. I feel like, if a man is in, an action movie or in an action, he's not called like a big, strong man. This movie's not a chick flick. It's a psychological spy thriller. I just am female, but it doesn't change the genre. No, I don't. I'm trying to, as I'm talking, I'm trying to remember your question. What was it? I'm sorry, I've had a long day.
You're a heavy activist. I think you embrace that in acting
130
and outside
pounds,
of it.
but an activist nonetheless.
So I guess my question
35.
is, do you bring your activism into your work? And in this case,
I don't. I really
embracing-
don't. I feel like that would be a mistake. Whoa, Kentucky. I am very active politically. I'm very opinionated. But that's just because I love my country. And, I don't care how anybody votes. I have my own beliefs. I don't care about anybody else. I believe that we should be living in a full democracy, not a flawed democracy. I believe that the officials that we elect into office should be working for us and not spend 70% of their time fundraising and voting for the super PACs and the lobbyists that own them. So
You're in the right city
I
to
just
talk about
believe,
stuff like that.
So I speak that way just as an American who loves her country, but it doesn't. I would never let it affect my career. I guess you could call it a coincidence, maybe. But Jodie Foster did one time say to me that I would always look back and see a pattern in my movies. So maybe I will look back at this and see this was around the time I was becoming really outspoken politically. Something.
Thank you.
We're taking some questions via Facebook Live, so I'm going to take one from, they've been handed to me on cards, and Kyle Morgan asks Jonna, there's a certain romantic allure about working for the CIA. Is this accurate or just a pop culture illusion?
I think people are fascinated with espionage. I'm not really sure why. Maybe because it's kind of behind a curtain and that makes it mysterious and that makes it interesting. The American public likes to know all the facts. They want the details. They want to know what's going on. And with espionage, you can never tell them. And I think that forms this kind of mystique that has been now popularized in pop culture and the James Bond and the International Spy Museum. Everybody loves this espionage subject. Is it accurate? When I was working, it never felt mysterious. It felt incredibly interesting and really challenging. You'd go to work every day and you'd never know what was going to be waiting for you or where you were going to be that evening, maybe in Cairo. You just never knew. And I found that to be, if that's romantic, I found that part of it to be really, really fun.
Mm-hmm. And do you, just to follow up to this one, did you find that your colleagues at the CIA read spy fiction, watched spy movies?
No. Because it was never right. The words were never right. The motivations were never right. It never rang true. Tom Clancy sort of started coming in and doing some stuff. John le Carré, maybe. Mm-hmm. There was some good spy fiction, but my colleagues...
And Red Sparrow, of course, is the exception.
I think it's one of the best books I read last year. I said that before I even knew there was a movie afoot. I loved the book. It's gotten better.
Okay. So, question over here.
Yeah. Hi. I actually live in Venezuela and work there. Long story short, it's a dictatorship, and I actually work for the opposition there. So, surveillance, intelligence, counterintelligence, Russian counterintelligence there is something that we actually worry about. And I personally have suffered situations where I have encountered myself being followed. And it may be difficult, Jennifer, from being followed by someone who wants to take a selfie. Somebody might want to harm you, arrest you, or something else worse. So this question is for you, Ms. Jonna. How do you cope emotionally with the stress of being constantly with the belief that you're not safe? And I don't know if for the director or Jennifer, if you thought about this emotional, having to cope emotionally with this during the portrayal of your role. Thank you very much for your answer.
Is that for me?
Yeah.
I'll start. The stress of being constantly under surveillance is represented in Moscow because there's always hazardous duty pay if you're assigned there. If you work at our embassy in Moscow, you get extra pay for the hardship. And the hardship is that environment that you have to operate in, where they're shooting microwaves at the embassy, where there are bugs everywhere, where there are guards at the gates, there are observation posts in the high towers looking down into our embassy. It's just unrelenting. But it never felt so much like they wanted to do us harm. They wanted to follow us and see who we were talking to, and they wanted to arrest them and do them harm. Mm-hmm. And they would typically execute them if we would lead them to them. Mm-hmm. So.
And that's part of this film, too.
Yeah.
That's referenced.
Yeah, it was
in this.
deadly serious in Moscow.
Yeah. And did you have something for Jennifer?
I mean, we definitely dealt with the emotional aspects of espionage. I mean, the world that Dominica gets pulled into is not the glamorous world at all of it. And it's at its core a survival story for her. And so she's constantly dealing with it. And it's that human aspect that drew me to the story in the first place.
And is there, she wanted to know, is there some connection between being followed around as a famous actress all the time and being followed around as a
Absolutely
spy?
not. No, I mean, I would like the skills just to be able to get away, but no, it's a completely different thing. I sympathize.
Yeah,
and
I agree. It's a completely different thing.
Yeah.
I wasn't saying it wasn't a completely different thing.
That was
saying
not
it
my question, sorry.
Very different.
But it is an interesting thing. I mean, the aspect of your question, I think, is interesting. Did you cope with the stress of the unrelenting and constant feeling like you're always under surveillance? Did you eventually become accustomed to it, or is there any coping mechanisms for it?
We were a technical office, and there were technical solutions that could be applied to surveillance. As long as surveillance thinks they have you in sight, they're happy. And if you make them happy and get them comfortable, then you can
Play them a bit, yeah.
you can play them a bit. And if you have friends out in LA in the movie business or in the magic industry or in some other places that can help you with a little bit of deceiving, a little bit of illusion on the street, go for it.
Ooh.
Fake mustache.
No.
What she's saying is get a mustache.
No.
Fake mustache.
No. Is that real?
Question over here.
Hi there, my name's Allegra Harris. I have a question, I'm sorry, it's pronounced Jonna, is that correct?
John.
My question is, Americans love watching spy movies because we all want to imagine ourselves as spies. But as chief of disguise, are there any parallels to what we see in movies as far as the disguise part that we see happening in James Bond or whatever it is? Or is it really sort of all very separate?
Well, the problem is that in the movies, they can take all kinds of second takes, third takes. They can play with the lighting. They can make it perfect. And we never got second takes. What we did had to be right, and it had to be right the first time. It had to, a disguise, typically you put it on in a dark car, get out of the car, there's no mirror. So what we made to be put on in that car had to be something so dead simple that you couldn't put it on wrong. You couldn't put a wig on backwards or something. Hollywood's goals and our goals were quite different. Where Hollywood helped us is coming to the middle in terms of materials and technology and techniques that they use that we would take and modify for our use. And it's a good thing every country in the world doesn't have a Hollywood, or we'd be up against much tougher opposition out there.
Thank you.
So I'll take another Facebook Live question. This one is from James Ragsdale for Jennifer. Would you say, interesting question, maybe a little hard for the audience since they haven't seen the whole film, but would you say that Red Sparrow is a feminist film?
I mean, it's certainly not a feminist film. I mean, to me, I feel like, sexuality and feminism, they kind of circle around each other. Feminism means equality, social, political, economic equality. And sexuality.
Getting a little applause.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I came up with that. You can quote me. So yeah, I mean, I'll just speak to my own personal experience. It was absolutely a feminist movie for me personally, because I really got I was kind of revalidated on certain things that I was fuzzy on, that now looking back, I can't believe that I was ever confused. I thought, I can't say yes to this movie because if I get naked, then everybody's gonna say, oh, well, then how could you be so upset about the hack in 2014 if you, and I really thought that. And then after doing the movie, I was like, I really learned the difference between consensual and non-consensual.
Oh, interesting.
And that was important just for me. And I feel proud of it. So for me, and the amount of money that I made, fuck yeah.
Very clear answer.
Should have probably talked to the media trainer about that one.
Hi. First, I just want to thank you, Jennifer, for fighting for female equality as a young female who hopes to have a career in the film industry. I couldn't ask for a better role model than you. And I also just have a question for Joel and Jennifer. Obviously, in the film, your characters use their special skills to be able to figure out these classified secrets. If you had these skills in real life, what top secret would you like to be able to figure out?
What the fuck's going on in the White House?
Wow.
Do you want to say that again?
No.
Yeah.
I got a lot of questions. What top secret thing would be? Oh. I mean, honestly, I'd like to know what's going on between Karlie Kloss and Taylor Swift. Like, that's the honest to God truth.
I know. I already know this.
Is nobody
I
else just
already know.
like curious? It's keeping me up at night. What happened?
I have no idea what you're talking about. I feel like
Me neither.
I'm definitely, as an outsider, very curious about what's going on in America right now with this, you know.
Across the board.
So, did you say so? We? Yeah, but what are you talking about? Because there's so much of it, right? Yeah, I would love to just be able to get to the bottom of something. I've become more, like, so much more educated about American politics, and I think it's one of the great benefits, one of the great upsides of, you know, your current president is that people have become, who are otherwise not interested in politics, becoming very interested in how the system works and what's going on. And I've become very fascinated with it, and I would love to be, a fly on certain walls.
Yeah.
Present and past. That's all I'm going to say at risk of being shot from the wings.
The president likes to call my newspaper the failing New York Times.
Yeah,
but
this is the fake
but it's actually thanks
museum.
to him that our digital subscriptions have gone through the roof.
Totally.
So, you know,
I would
thank you, President
break
Trump.
onto the Twitter and denounce domestic abuse. And just, that would be huge.
Yeah.
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 Won't even do that.
Question.
Hi, good evening. My name is Vince. I work at a museum that deals with this stuff down the road a little bit. My question is for Joel and Jonna, actually. And Joel, particularly because of your role in Zero Dark 30 in that past. And Jonna, perhaps because of your experience in some familiar relationships. And you alluded to this a little bit, and it's interesting to see Hollywood and the intelligence community on the stage at the same time. This is not something new. That there is certainly ties in between Zero Dark 30 and CIA and the relationship making that movie. And Jonna, you know a little bit about how Hollywood and the agency have come together. Can you guys talk a little bit about that relationship that, in Jonna's case, goes back several decades? Perhaps, Joel, you can talk about a couple years ago.
I go back several decades too. It's just really good lighting here. Look, I'm actually fascinated by the relationship between any kind of government agency or law enforcement on any level, from state police and sheriff's department all the way up to CIA and Hollywood, whichever one it is, because I've plugged into all sorts of places, even with Bright, which was, you know, a fantasy movie. We spent a lot of time with sheriff's department, LAPD, various law enforcement. Obviously with Zero Dark 30, I've spent time with Navy SEALs, and now, you know, with Jason and tapped very in minor ways into the CIA. I feel like, you know, just across the board qualified guy to solve all your problems. But I'm fascinated by the fascination with Hollywood, and I'm fascinated by Hollywood's fascination. I mean, I don't doubt Hollywood's fascination. I mean, sitting here with Jonna right now, it reminds me of growing up with my brother, when my brother became a stuntman, and people were like, oh, they're fascinated by actors, but the moment they meet someone actually really interesting, like my brother, when he was a stuntman, it was like, oh, forget about you, you're just an actor, I want to know what a stuntman does. And there's a fascination with certain people's careers, and there's a mystique, and there's a real dignity, I think, to people who are out there solving problems and putting their life on the line, or putting their livelihood on the line and risking things and feeling, as a young lady from Venezuela pointed out, anxiety on a day-to-day level. We just pretend anxiety. We pretend that we know how to hold a gun. We pretend that we know how to solve problems. And yeah, that's a valid thing, but there's real people doing real things. So, and it's interesting that there's a symbiotic relationship between those things when a movie requires real skill. And those people, I notice, have a fascination with us. And I wonder if from their end they go, why are you fascinated with us? We're just normal people. Because I sit there going, don't be fascinated with me. Like, I haven't done a serious day's work in my life.
If you go back to the founding of the CIA, and right before it, the predecessor, it was called OSS. It was down in Washington, D.C., 2430 East Street, across the street from State Department, up on a hill. And the people that came in to volunteer for that initial American intelligence agency came from Hollywood. The photo lab that I started working in, when I first started working at CIA, was established by John Ford, the director. He brought in cameramen and all that technology from Hollywood and set it down in Washington, D.C. to support the war. John Wayne was part of it. Sterling Hayden was part of it. This is all spelled out in the Spy Museum. We have a hallway with all, with all these Hollywood stars. So it began very early. It wasn't just our disguise program, but Hollywood has always been responsive. From a technical point of view, where I lived at CIA, there are geniuses out in LA that gave us their time and their energy. My husband, Jonna Mendez, said that one of the only geniuses, true geniuses he had ever met in his life was a Hollywood makeup guy named John Chambers. He gives him a whole lot of credit. But it's been ongoing. It probably is going on today. I don't know, not there anymore. But
so your husband was portrayed in what movie? Now that's a planned question.
Tony was the man that the Argo movie was about. Ben Affleck played Tony. Although my husband told Ben, my husband told Ben Affleck he was not good looking enough to play him. And that story goes back to the connection of CIA and Hollywood back at that time. It was a Hollywood story that helped rescue 6 American diplomats out of Tehran.
If you haven't seen Argo, find it on Netflix or somewhere.
It's a great movie.
It's a great movie. Next question.
Hi. I was just wondering what your least favorite part of filming was and what your favorite part of filming was.
My least favorite was probably with my arms tied and I don't like getting wet, especially like at work, So I didn't like that, which I bet will surprise you. I didn't like the torture scenes. And my favorite scene, do you know what my favorite scene was? You know what my least favorite scene was, actually? Shooting with a helicopter. At the end of the movie, there's a helicopter. I can't tell you who's in it. I don't remember who's in it. But it's very annoying to wait for helicopters and then we go back.
And it was cold.
My favorite was probably when I was laying in bed and you brought me coffee.
It's one of my favorite scenes.
Yeah, because I was like laying in bed and then they'd be like, and then start from the top. And I'd be like, go on, Joel. And I would get to lay down.
Take 25, more coffee?
Yeah.
My favorite scene was a scene that starts with me spitting in a coffee cup.
And your least favorite? Our sex scene?
Our sex scene was pretty funny. What I found funny is that yesterday or today you talked about how long it went on for, and I seem to remember it was one of the shortest scenes I've ever.
I know. I was saying to Francis, I was like, blah, 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 and I was like, but it went on for a really, really long time, and Joel did not hear me, and then he was like, yeah, but it was so short, right?
Very un-Australian of me to say that, actually.
I know that accent.
Let me take one more from Facebook Live, which is from James Murphy for Jennifer. Jennifer, you tend to get cast as complicated villains, femme fatales, superwomen. Ever want to make a nice, cozy rom-com?
I mean, I think I have to now. This has been the majority of the questions. I think I have to change things up and stop playing powerful, strong characters.
Ooh, you're scaring America.
Yeah. No, I'd love to do a comedy. I'm working on a comedy with my newly married friend, Amy. I don't know what her name is now. Amy Lawrence. And we're working on that. That'll take a while, but I definitely wouldn't turn down a comedy. One hasn't come across I don't really have a desk, my kitchen counter.
Yeah.
So.
Actually, yeah, I watched you on some panels to prepare for this, and you're actually a very funny person. So.
Oh, thank you. Thanks.
Next question.
Please don't applaud. That would be mortifying.
Oh, hi. Were there any, like, you and Frances have worked together previously, so I was wondering if there was any differences on working on this movie and The Hunger Games, and did you guys learn anything new about each other?
I mean, it was really interesting. I mean, the entire reason why I wanted it to be Francis was because of my experience with him. As a filmmaker, I just think he's brilliant. So it was really cool to kind of watch him in a totally different world. Just really the scope of what he can do. It just gets bigger and bigger. I mean, it was beautiful what he made. So it was cool watching him kind of start a whole different world.
I mean, my answer's kind of the same in the sense that, I mean, we as people haven't really changed, and I think that we started to like working together on our first film together. So there's just a great comfort level when we work, but everything about what we were doing was completely different, and that was what was exciting to me about going into this movie, was to see her look different, sound different, move differently, and behave differently. And
wow, Frances.
So we did. It was great. So to see that transformation was the biggest change for me.
Sorry.
Hi everyone, how you doing? Were there any scenes that you had to leave out from the movie that it was heartbreaking to leave out?
Heartbreaking. No, well, there's one scene. There's actually one small scene with Joel that I was bummed to lose, and there's a bit where he's suspended near the beginning of the movie and he's sent back to the U.S. And we see his character with an escort, and it was a sort of a facet of the character and there's still sort of a little tidbit left, but it was a facet of the character and the loneliness that I really liked for the character, and I was sad to see that go.
Thanks.
Hi. So I know that the characters that you've played have left big imprints on your audiences most of the time. Is there anything that you'll take away from this character?
Not really, because she's just so much smarter than I am. So I'm like incapable of learning how she is the way she is, because I just don't. It wasn't like, I remember on Joy, I was 25 and, oh, thank you. But I remember that kind of changed me a little bit of that character. I remember thinking to myself, you know what, I'm never gonna say something I don't mean ever again. Because I had a meeting and it got uncomfortable, and I was just so uncomfortable with that I was just like, okay, it's fine, because I didn't want the conflict, and then nothing got done, and I was like, what was the point? So I decided to always say whatever I mean, and be nice and kind, but honest, and that changed me. But Dominica, maybe it hasn't been enough time for me to realize what I've taken away.
Some martial arts, maybe?
Yeah, some martial arts, and I just take my top off anywhere I go. Get used to it.
Question.
Hi, our question is for Jen and Joe. We are huge fans of the book, so if you guys read it, and if yes, what was your favorite part?
I started the book, and then Frances told me not to finish it.
I did.
Because the character was different in the movie than she is in the book, and it was going to mess me up. So I was instructed specifically not to read the book. Joel, did he tell you not to read the book too?
Nobody told me not to read the book. I just can't read. Look, I think that I really love you know, I love that there's a trilogy. I mean, you obviously read all of them a lot of times.
All of them.
I need to get you on as a consultant. I love the world. What I'll say about it is I love the world. I grew up reading a lot of John le Carré spy novels, and I love the whole just general world of it. I'm really looking forward to people responding to the movie well, and that they will take to social media. I guess that's sometimes now how studios listen to whether or not to make another movie. So if we did a good enough job of it, that they'll bring us back and we get to explore it more. Yeah.
Thank you.
I love your sweatshirt.
Thank you.
This may be the last one. Go right ahead.
Following up on that, I did read the book, and in it, my recollection is Dominica has an unusual perceptual skill.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, because I found it distracting, frankly.
Yeah.
And I'm curious whether or not you used it, and if so, would you be willing to talk about how you made that decision?
Yeah, I did not use it. Synesthesia, and I did not use it in the movie.
Want to explain what that is?
Yeah, synesthesia is the idea that one can see color, sometimes color auras around certain kinds of people, depending on how you feel about them or the sense that you get about them. And so the character in the book has this sense, and so can easily read people based on the color that surrounds them. I decided not to do this in the movie. I think that seeing that would also instantly change the tone and turn it into a bit of a fantastical piece of work. And I wanted it to be much more grounded. And I also thought it was too easy of a shortcut to decide who's good and who's bad, and that's part of the fun of the movie, is not knowing where people stand. It is something that Jen and I talked about, though, in the sense that Dominica is very good at reading people, and Jen is also very good at reading people. And so we played with that idea as deep, deep, deep subtext to any scene, right? That she has that kind of ability. And there's one little nod to it in Jen's favorite scene where she was laying down all day with the coffee cup. She actually is telling a story. There's some piano that's playing, and she's talking about how she did her first solo dance to it as a 16-year-old ballerina, or 13-year-old or something, and she was so nervous. And when she got on stage, that she imagined painting color over the audience's faces. And so I was able to work in one little nod to the synesthesia in the story.
Well, we're out of time, so thanks very much to these guys who've been working hard all day long. That they came out and talked to all you.